The movie came out in 1999, and it was an amazing movie because it had so many symbols and so much mythology in the movie. I mean, just to give you an example, the movie The Matrix starts with three numerics, 5, 0, and 6. And I'd been teaching for a long time, and so when this movie came out, I could just connect the dots very, very quickly. 5 in the world of numerology equals the number for man, a man who's, or a human being who's fallen, that they are guided by their 5 senses. 0 is a number for death, and 6 becomes a number for perfection. So at the very beginning of the movie, what you have is, you have a human being, i.e. Thomas Anderson, who wants to attain perfection, Neo, and he has to struggle. And the only way he can become fully perfect is by entering 0, which is death. And it's a very, very horrifying place to be because, you know, you and I enjoy conformity. We enjoy things that are familiar because it gives us control. Now, what happened when the DVD for the movie came out, there was an additional DVD that went behind the scenes and kind of gave a glimpse to the audience how this movie was made. And then you realize Thomas Anderson really is not stopping bullets coming his way. It's all technology. He can't really jump from one building to another. It's just, you know, he's tied to a rope and he jumps. And Trinity is not really as attractive as the movie suggests. Behind the scenes, she's actually not so attractive. And so it removes some of the magic from the movie itself. So when you sit, and I used to play this movie for my classes for about 10 years, and I used to teach almost 10 classes every semester. So I've watched this movie probably 1,000 times. And now that you know what's taking place behind the scenes, the movie is not really as interesting. And that's something I like to do with my classes or with ideas. Because when, for example, you talk about love, when you talk about violence, when you talk about forgiveness, when you go behind the scenes and you begin to understand how the stuff is made, you realize it's not really an act of God. It's not like God is up there trying to create certain things for you in your life so you can, understand things. The only way understanding comes about is for you to go behind the scenes, go where God even can go, break things open, and then the mystery and the magic goes away. And then the words that you use, such as forgiveness, such as compassion, such as love, such as cheating, whatever the case may be, they kind of lose their power over you a little bit. And I think it's important to understand that. So, again, forgive me, those of you who were here on Thursday, because this is going to be, again, another repeat. And as I once shared with you, repetition is important. Because that's what you do when you practice something over and over and over again until you become really good at it, whether it's cooking, playing the piano, or understanding ideas. So, this is Abigail, okay? And this is Abe. Well, he's over there, so you can't really smell him. So the nose goes out the window, okay? Once in a while, this person raises his hand and asks questions. And so a couple of things happen. First, when you listen to him, you realize he has a nice voice. That in itself is attractive, okay? You also realize that this is a man who doesn't just ask casual questions. He asks good questions, and that's another attraction. So you have now two components that are very attractive, okay? Then you also have the benefit of looking at this person with your eyes, okay? And you realize, well, he's got a nice body, he has nice hair, he has a nice face. So now you have three components that are very attractive, okay? Now add to it the fact that you see this person on a frequent basis. So remember, your eyes, your ears, okay, they begin to blossom, become layered or pregnant with attraction. And what attraction does, if you keep nourishing it, it's kind of like food. As your belly gets bigger, okay, when you eat too much, what happens is when you are nourished by attraction over and over and over and over again, attraction has a pleasure principle to it. You enjoy what you experience. And then what happens is the attraction blossoms into desire. Now, if you had only seen this person once, it may come to a desire, and then it may end there, because then he just disappears. You think about him, is he going to come to class today? Is he not going to come to class today? Okay. Should he just drop the class and not ever show up? This remains as a dim memory. And in time, you'll just forget all about this. Okay. And this also goes back to the question that we talked about on Thursday with Alex in regards to forgiveness. When you see the same behavior over and over and over again, then you become conflicted. Should I forgive him? Should I hurt him? Should I not forgive him? So, and so now you begin to desire whatever it is that has captured your attention. Now, the problem with attraction and desire is this. You see, it's not enough for me to just look at the coffee. There is something about the human organism that if you have the power, and we're just talking about coffee, nothing else. If your arm works and you can lift it, and if you're not going through chemotherapy where all of your taste buds get destroyed and everything tastes like metal, what you have is the union of the cup to your lips, okay, and then the liquid to your tongue. What you have is marriage. What you have is intimacy. What you have is sex. Okay? And it's very, very natural. I may be eating a lollipop, but when I see the coffee, I'm going to take out the candy, put it on the table, get a sip. You want to call this cheating? You can. Okay? So you need to understand that there is, it's very, very, very natural and organic. We're going to talk about the morality of it much later, whether it's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. And also that depends on the culture in which you live. Okay? Now, should you see this person on a regular basis, you go home saying, man, this is really, really fascinating. His ideas are interesting. Today he looked gorgeous. You know, God forbid if you're sitting next to him because he may have put some cologne on and he says, man, he smells good too. Now you have 4 components to deal with, your nose. Okay? And then after a while you say, yeah, I want his phone number. I want to talk to him. I want to maybe have coffee with him. You can still walk away from this. But the only way you can walk away from this is the following. John. You've been with John for about 5 years. This is 5 years of history. And for the most part, it's been positive. So if you're going from 1 to 10, his value is 9. And in the course of 5 years, you talk about marriage, you talk about buying a house, having children, having met his parents, him having met your parents, all that stuff. Okay. Now, you want Abe. All of a sudden, again, this is, a lot of it has to do with the culture in which you live, you know, and your upbringing. If, for example, your mom or your dad have always gone outside of the line and been with another, that becomes your habit as well eventually, because your trust factor and faith factor and dependency factor and consistency factor, they kind of shattered it a little bit. But forget all that stuff. Now, let's say everything about your life is good. Now, you want Abe, but for some strange reason, the fact of John entered and he said, do I really want to pursue this? Is it going to damage this? And then, depending on how reflective you are, you're going to sit back and say, you know, finding a decent guy is really, really tough in America. A guy who doesn't smoke, a guy who doesn't drink, a guy who has a job, a guy who is good with his parents. a guy who thinks and speaks well and carries himself well. Do I want to give all of this up for an unknown thing? Now, again, remember, you can still walk away from this. But given that you may be at a place in life where you're still exploring, experimenting, trying to figure out who and what you are within the context of Oakland or life, you say, well, he is good, but maybe he's better. He once gave you what this guy is giving you. I mean, that's another interesting part to us that just doesn't make any sense. He gave you all the attention and all the attraction that this guy is giving you, but you're used to him. He is a known quality. He's no longer that interesting. It's like going behind the scenes and watching the movie The Matrix, how it's made. It's no longer as exciting. And we're always looking for another interesting thing to walk into our life. And there is nothing wrong with that. Okay? Now, let's say that you say, no, I think I want to pursue this, see where it goes. And then it turns into a need. The moment you say, I need him, what happens is you are emotionally involved with the image of this person. See, up to this point, it's been casual up to the want point. But the moment it becomes a need, going back to Alex's question, I need to forgive him. The moment you have need, guilt comes about as well. I can't forgive him, but I feel guilty for not being able to forgive him. How do I move about forgiving him or her or it? Okay. Now you have an emotional relationship and it's going to be very, very, very difficult to walk away. And the only reason why it's an emotional intimacy is when there is a need, you have spent a good amount of time. It has history in it. It also has dreams, hopes, and fantasies. Because you're not with him just yet. You're with the images that you conjure up in your own mind. Nothing wrong with that. Once you have a need, something really awful happens. You go home and John says, hey, how you doing? How was your day? And as he's talking, his voice rings in your ears. It's not there, but it rings. I'm doing fine. And you imagine as if Abe is talking to you. And God forbid if you guys are having a good time in the privacy of the bedroom. In your head, you're imagining him as opposed to him. Yeah? No, you say no. Of course not. Yeah. Okay, now. Well, I'm not going to tell you about whatever. Okay, now. Now, there is a problem now, and this is what we call the desert life. In other words, you need, but you don't yet have. And what you want to do is from the need to get to have. And now this makes you a political animal. How do I talk to him? How do I get his number? How do I tell him? And then you go back and forth. From here, you want to destroy the need and simply go back to the person that you were so you can be with him, but you can't. It's too late for that because you're emotionally involved. Okay? And then in this desert, there's a good amount of conflict. So you do something really, really interesting. You don't even have this, but the emotional need tells you you no longer want or need this person here. And you're just waiting. When should I tell him? Now? Tomorrow? Maybe next week? You're just waiting for the right moment. And then he comes home, he looks at you and says, what's wrong with you? I'm just not feeling well. What's going on? I'm reading this book And I think I want to go to the mountains and figure out who I am. What do you mean? I'm confused. I don't know what I want anymore. Yeah, you do. You want this, but just no longer this. But you're trying to camouflage it in all these like ridiculous, fantastic ideas. So he looks and says, oh my God, she's like on a quest to discover who and what she is. You know. And so you go to him and say, I don't think I can be with you anymore. I break up. What do you mean, break up? Get out. There's your bag. Leave. I no longer want to see you. Okay? He's gone. Now you are free. But just because you're free doesn't mean that Abe is right there. So you become a political animal. Eventually, Abe begins to like you, maybe even love you, and then something interesting will happen. Now that you have him, remember you were here. A need always creates poverty inside you, always. You want Subway, your belly screaming, that's poverty. How do you satisfy the poverty? Money, health. You walk to Subway, you stand in line patiently, you order the food, it comes your way, then you eat it like a pig. And now you want to throw up. Now you have Abe. When you have Abe, what happens is, and this is what we do. Do you know what a leech is, you guys? When I lived in India, we used to kind of walk barefoot and play soccer and cricket and frisbee and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, your certain part of your body would begin to like sting. And you look and there is a leech. And it has sucked a lot of your blood. And a leech, it's usually this big. And when it's been on your skin, sucking your blood, it gets this big. And then you kind of remove the leech, you know, put some salt on it for it to die. And you rub it with some plant that was just right there, and then it would go away. A leech means the following. Now that you have this, it's like a Subway sandwich, and you've been starving for about 2 months. You're going to consume everything that lives inside him. You go to the coffee shop, so what's your name? Abe. How old are you? 98. What have you been doing with your life? And he's going to tell you for the next like 2 months where he's been, what he's been doing, how many wives his kids killed, how many kids he's got, right? And then after a while you realize, well, you know, I've heard the stories. I have taken out of him whatever he had. He's got nothing else to give me. After having him, now you are satisfied. Now that you are satisfied, you keep looking for something interesting to come out of him, but there is nothing interesting. You're saturated. It's like the coffee, when you put a napkin in there, when you take it out, the coffee drips down. There is what, before you used to take things from him and it would stay with you. Now when he gives you things, they fall apart, they fall down, okay? Once you're satisfied, boredom sets in. Now, boredom is a very disturbing feeling because now you no longer have any power. You don't enjoy boredom. And then what happens is, now that you sit in boredom, all of a sudden John comes back to life. You say, really? How could I have been that stupid? I gave this up for what? A fling? Really? When boredom happens, dissatisfaction comes about. With dissatisfaction, you become unhappy. And you need power to fix this stuff, and you don't have the power. Because he's the one who made you happy, and he's no longer available. Okay? And now that you're unhappy, you get frustrated. Then you try to fix this. Remember, these are all various degrees of poverties. And to overcome any poverty, you need resources. Frustration is another poverty. It happens when you don't have power to control your environment. What's 2 plus 2, Abigail? What's 900 times 2,555? There you go, you see? And if this was a test, you'd probably feel pretty anxious about not being able to answer the second question. So remember, when things are familiar, you're okay. There is no sweating, no frustration, no anxiety. The moment things become complicated, anxiety comes about. So when people say, I just have anxiety attacks, well, of course you do. You have no power over the things you're doing in your life. Okay? Now, when there is frustration, eventually anxiety comes about. Confusion comes about. Depression comes about. Loneliness comes about. This is all of life. Whether you want to try this out or stay with this, in the end, this is where you end up. Welcome to life. But it really has nothing to do with you. You know, it's like gravity. You know, it's like you jump from a plane or a building and you're going down and you say, no, thank you, I think I want to go up. That's fine, you want to go up, you just can't. This is just how things work. You don't know what?
Just the phrase I say.
Oh.
I have this boyfriend
Allahu Akbar.
and then he passed away. And it's his 1 year anniversary on October 26th.
Okay.
I used to, I used to only like girls with boyfriends.
I'm getting really, really confused.
Me too.
It's okay. It's part of life. We have a saying in Persian, you know, when you flip a coin in the sky, it goes through 1,001 different turns, and then it lands. And then when it lands, you know if it's heads or tails. And I think human being, the stories for us, you know, modern people are very much the same. You know, today you're straight, tomorrow you're gay, the after tomorrow you're trans, then you're bi, then you're pan, then you're dish, then you're a saucer, then you're a spoon. And, you know, but when you're like 50 or 60 or 70, you say, oh, okay, I think I'm this now. And that's how things are, because most of the things that used to give human beings stability, they're no longer around. We don't find them meaningful. I mean, we don't find getting married at a young age meaningful anymore. We don't find going to school and getting a master's or a PhD by the time you're like 25, 26 meaningful. You know, we don't find commitment meaningful. We don't find responsibility meaningful because it lacks authenticity, creativity, independence. So we are in the business of, I mean, that's how contemporary people are. We're in the business of just throwing everything out the window, you know, in hopes of finding something that's inspiring. You know, I've had many athletes in my classes at Laney, and they all want to have this desire of getting picked by an NFL team. All of them do. And I always have to remind them, there are about 300 colleges in California, you know, 200 universities. They all have teams. You know, what are your chances? But, you know, and in the end, they end up nowhere. They don't graduate from school. And anyways, so yeah. So what you're sharing is really not that strange. That you were this, and you become this, and you had this, and you gave that up and went on to this other thing.
It's all about love. As long as you like try your best and you're happy,
No,
you're satisfied.
no. First of all, nobody can try their best without having a good understanding of their environment.
That's the most understanding that you have.
No, you have zero understanding.
Because you have no experience.
There you go. And why would you want to trust what you do when you have zero understanding? Because
Myself is instinct. Instinct.
instinct work for cats and dogs and lions and dolphins and spiders. They don't work for us. Well, you think. But you can't do that, so you have to let me think for you. You don't believe me.
I mean, I can understand what you're saying, just find like more experts on it.
If you want to learn to play the piano, what? You go to Joaquin? He can hardly walk. Yeah. If you want to make a chicken tikka masala, who do you go to? Deontay? No. In every branch of life, there is something really interesting. You know, the most practical things, driving a car, riding a bicycle, learning how to play a musical instrument. There is something about you says, you know, you don't know how to do this, ask. But then you verge on doing something that you have zero experience, like relationships, like love, like what you should study in school. And you say, no, I think I can do this on my own. No, you can't. This is like another branch in life, that's art. And you need someone who's an expert. You can't do it on your own. I mean, you can certainly try, but you won't end up anywhere. There are experts in every branch of life, and you need them. Yes, Joaquin, anything?
Every time you ask me that question, it's like, something about this class makes it really hard for me to express what I'm feeling.
It's these people. Should I kick them out? Okay.
And when you ask me that, I usually have something to say, but I just can't formulate the thoughts.
Just use your instinct. Just let it flow.
That's what I was thinking.
What?
Yeah, what I just said.
Instinct? You know, there are certain things about our biological nature that works very instinctually. In other words, you're walking, you see a serpent or a snake, and all of a sudden fear overcomes you. Okay? And it may be through evolution. I don't know how or why, and I may be wrong, but maybe because we've been here for a couple millions of years, evolution has kind of trained our system, you know, to kind of be fearful of snakes. If, for example, you were to look at the bears that live in Alaska versus the bears that live, say, in California, you realize that the bears that live in Alaska, they are really, really fluffy, you know? And the bears that live in California, they're fluffy as well, just not as fluffy. Well, in order to survive the freeze in Alaska, what do you need? You need a thick jacket. You know, I don't think God came down and said, you know, the bear over there, I'm just going to fluff him up. With this one, nah. Just evolution. Now, you are right in the sense that there is something quite organic about us, that there are moments where our instincts kick in, okay? But because of the complexity of our organism, because of the complexity of our culture, because of the complexity of human relationships, there is also another thing. See, communities are formed by animals in a very instinctual, intuitive way. They live in packs. We are desperate to live in packs. Why? We need to create friendships because we feel lonely, because we feel desperate. There is something about us that needs to manufacture things. It's no longer instinctual. There is a good amount of cunningness about it. Okay? And so when you enter into life, you can't just be like a dog and say, I'm just going to follow my instinct. I mean, you know, a dog has about, I think, the senses that they have in their nose, they go over 1 million of them. That's why they can smell so far away. And the only way you can kind of make a dog go a different direction is what we call red herring. It's this reddish, powderish thing that you just throw on the ground, and the dog loses its original scent. We only have maybe a couple thousand. That's it. And so you can't really trust your nose when you want to follow something. It's not that strong. So most of what we call instinct, really, for the most part, is given to us by advertisements, by our assumptions, by our infantile feelings, and they're not really trustworthy.